everyone, and welcome to Call Your Hits, a Storm Riders Airsoft podcast. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Today, I'm joined in the virtual studio by Jordan. Jordan is a member of the Storm Riders Discord community, and I've had the great privilege of getting to chat with him many times over the last few months, and he's a big supporter of ours, so I'm really happy to able to have a chat with him today. So welcome, Jordan. Jordan is actually pretty new to Airsoft. He only played his first game this year, but despite this, he's probably done more ready-ups than all of y'all. I'm just going to put that out there. Jordan probably did more ready-ups in his first 2 months or before even playing than I did in my first 10 years. We'll get to that a little bit later. Jordan was out there researching his kit, practicing drills, getting ready well before his first game. So today we thought it'd be pretty cool to have a talk with him about what it was like hitting the field for the first time, how his gear was selected, and how his game has evolved since then, and sort of everything in between, really. It's not very often you get a chance to speak with a beginner in sort of real time, so we jumped at the opportunity. And I guess where I want to start is sort of the question that everybody starts with is, how did you discover Airsoft? What got you into it?
So over quarantine, I was kind of stuck at home like a lot of people were. I used to work at a school. So during quarantine, all schools got shut down. So I didn't really, have anything to do other than be at home, monitoring emails and stuff like that. So I started watching a lot of YouTube videos. And the first one that came up actually for me that I got into it with was a video from Dutch the Hooligan, who I'm sure a lot of people know. And he was playing in an abandoned mall. And I saw that video, and me being a big fan of Escape from Tarkov and all those video games, I was like, oh my God, these people are fully dressed up, looking super cool, throwing grenades and stuff inside of an abandoned mall. You can do that? That's a thing? And I didn't really know to the extent of how accessible this was, at least in my area, until I started doing a little bit more research. And I kind of just went down, the quarantine video pipeline, and I was just watching video after video after video. And I just ended up, kind of deciding, hey, let's look into this a little bit more. I always wanted to play paintball growing up, but I never did. Now I'm a little bit older, so I can kind of make my own choices on more so what I want to do.
Yeah.
So I kind of just decided, okay, let's look into this. And I noticed that there were a couple fields that were under an hour from me that I was like, okay, so if I really want to try this, there's an opportunity to. And at the time I had lost a bunch of weight during quarantine. So I was like, this is a good thing to keep up with fitness, running around outside. It gives me an excuse to be outside and, being active. And I kind of decided that I was going to jump into it. I picked a time after I got fully vaccinated, because we're still in COVID times here, and decided that I would hit the field 2 weeks after I get my fully vaxxed. And here we are. I jumped out on the field, full kit.
Yeah, so I mean, that's interesting in of itself. Most people, in my experience, I'd say many airsofters got their start by getting loaner kit from someone for their first game, maybe even first couple of games before they really decide to, pardon the expression, pull the trigger on the hobby and just really jump into it. Because especially in the States it's probably cheaper than in Canada, but it is pretty expensive either way. You're still looking at several $100s. So most people don't just drop that sort of like that. So how did all that shake out for you? What is it that made you sort of go full bore right out the gate?
So for me, with all of my hobbies and everything that I've kind of done leading up to this point, when I find something that I know I like, or I know I'm going to like, I kind of just full send into it. And I want to get all of the stuff and the stuff that goes with the stuff, because I just think that oh, well, if I'm going to be doing this, I want all the things so I can do it as best as I can. So I kind of skipped the whole rental process. I know all of the guides and everybody's saying, oh, you should go rent first, see if you like it. But yeah. I will say I was never more confident. I've never been more confident that I was going to enjoy something before even trying it than I was with Airsoft. Because it fulfilled a bunch of different things for me. Being outside, I like hiking. I like doing all that stuff. So being outside and running around, that fills that. Being able to dress up and be super cool looking, at least in my opinion. I always thought that was super cool. So I like the dress up aspect of it a lot. So getting little pieces of kit before I started playing, it got me like more excited. I'd be sitting around in my house just wearing my plate carrier just because I was like, oh, let's see how comfortable this is, and I just put it on and move around and see how it feels. Um, and then I kind of just ended up getting a bunch of stuff that I didn't need, but in my head I thought I did. Before I even played my first game because I didn't go out and try it. But
Yeah.
outside of that, I mean, I just full sent it. I just went right into the hobby. I skipped the rental, and there's things that are good and bad about that for me. I learned a lot, and I spent a lot of
Hmm.
money that I definitely did not need to, um, because I skipped out on the trying the game phase.
So how did you pick? I We'll get to like what worked and what didn't or hasn't worked or whatever a little bit later, but like right out the gate, like how did you even figure out what it is that you wanted to buy or get?
So I watched a lot of videos. I like I said, I played a lot of games, so there was like a lot of things in my mind that I like visualized that I think would be super cool to wear. So, being a big Escape from Tarkov player, I saw that they were all wearing the mechanics gloves inside the game, and when I realized that you could wear them like on the field because you could just buy them for like $15. I was like, well, I have to do
Yeah.
that. So I bought some gloves, and then after that, I was like, okay, well, I definitely need face protection. I definitely need eye protection because I am super afraid of getting a tooth shot out. You know, now I'm a little bit more laid back about it, but I still cover my teeth. But
Yep.
getting shot in the teeth, I'm not as tough as the Storm Riders guys, it seems, because I can't
Yeah,
run
well,
around
you
in
got to
there.
protect that smile. I
Yeah.
got nothing to protect. So,
Oh, but yeah, that was just like one big fear of me. Along with that, my girlfriend at the same time, like I know she was super worried about my safety too. Going
Mhm.
outside and running around. I had just turned 26, so I was getting onto like my own insurance and stuff like that. So stuff was starting to become real to me, price wise.
Yeah.
And I knew that I needed to be able to invest in stuff that would keep me safe. So I got a helmet. I got face protection. I got ear protection, mostly to look cool. That was like
Yeah.
the main thing was like, oh, everybody wears contacts. That's super cool. So I picked up a pair and I made them work with my helmet. And now I'm so happy that I did because so many people use banger grenades around me.
Yeah.
And those go offside inside buildings all the time. And if I wasn't wearing those, I would be in some big trouble because those guys are
Yeah,
running
I'd
some
say.
loud ones. Um, but other than that, I mean, I just picked out camo. I was like, oh, everybody's wearing multicam. Let's go pick out multicam. I live in the Northeast.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
Not really the best idea.
Yeah.
Um, it's fashion show, so I thought I looked cool. So it whatever worked for me. I saw
Yeah.
your guys' videos, the Storm Riders, and I saw a bunch of you guys wearing plate carriers. So this was probably some older videos because I got into
Yeah.
watching their beginner videos and stuff like that. So I saw a bunch of your plate carriers, and I'm like, okay, I want to get a plate carrier too. Looks like it fits, it covers up your chest and stuff like that. That's what I wanted. So I started off getting, just this like Lancer tactical plate carrier that was kind of before I, started looking at gear to understand what I was getting. And it fit horribly. It was just
Hmm.
huge. It didn't hug me like at all. It was like sticking off the sides of my body. I did not like it. But at the time, I didn't really understand until I got
Yeah.
something better that was, not even better like money wise. It was just better fitting.
Yep, for sure.
And it was just like that was one of the things I wish that I would have done more research into, or, maybe tried somebody's on before I went in. Cause, it was not something that I wish I had. I ended up giving it away to a friend and he uses it now. So, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. And what about your AEGs and stuff? Like, did you just do like just read reviews and go from there, or?
Yeah, so the AEG was a big thing for me, because getting into this, I had like a budget set in my head of like, okay, here's the things that I want to be able to afford. Getting into this, I don't want to spend over. I think it was like $500 that I didn't want to spend over. Uh, I blew that out of the water, like really bad. I spent way over $500, and counting. But
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome to
yeah.
airsoft, bud.
Oh yeah, it's been a ride. It's been a ride for sure. But going into it, I actually did a lot of research on the Reddit, not just for what guns are good, looking up threads like that. But there's a really good, or at least what I thought was really good guide, that's like the beginner's guide that was labeled for 2021 on the Reddit. And
Hmm.
it went through a bunch of different guns and different types of guns and guns that people would say were more budget oriented for people that were trying to get into the sport. And on that list was my Specna arms.
Hmm.
And I liked the Spectre Arms when I first saw it. It was full metal, which is something that I wanted. I didn't really want to run around and fall on the gun, which I have done, and break it. And my Spectre is still fine. So I'm glad I didn't get a plastic one. But
Hmm.
I did a lot of my research just through Reddit and watching videos. I didn't really have any friends. I didn't have any friends coming into this at all. I didn't know anybody that played Airsoft. So all of my research was done purely based online and just reading a ton of stuff. My friends actually make fun of me and they just say, yeah, Jordan does a lot of reading. He knows a lot of things because he just reads so much. And it's true.
Hmm.
Anytime I'm interested in something, I'm always looking up as many different resources as I can to gather whatever information I can. So it brought me down to Specna Arms. It has a quick change spring. That was a godsend for working on my first gearbox, so it didn't explode on me. Um, Outside of that, I really don't have any complaints about it. If I would have left it alone, it would have been perfect. I didn't. I changed a bunch of stuff about it that I definitely didn't have to, and I've suffered the consequences for that. But I have a great shooting gun now after spending way too much money, and yeah, that's it about my Specna.
I mean, it's pretty ballsy too to think about like starting to play airsoft on like first game ever, April. If you said April 4th,
April 4th.
2021,
Yep, Easter.
April 4th, 2021, and now we're October 14th, and my man here has already like done like 10,000 ready ups and worked on like multiple gearboxes. Right? I didn't touch a gearbox on an airsoft gun till at least 3 years playing. Now at the time there's a lot less resources and blah blah blah. I'm an old man, whatever. But still, like there's not a lot of people out there who are going into airsoft and just like going like you said full send and starting to work on their gearbox. So that's pretty crazy. But let's go back to now. You've got all this like cool guy, high speed tier 1 operator gear sitting around in your Lancer tactical plate carrier at home.
The highest of
Getting
speeds. The highest
Yeah,
of
high
speeds.
speed. Yeah. But you've got all this kit, you're ripping raring to go. You've got your first game. What was that? Firstly, I guess what was the lead up to the first game like? So what was going through your mind before your first game? What did you think it was gonna be like?
So I definitely fell into the trap of thinking it was going to be a lot more like the videos that I see, which I feel like is kind of what get people into the sport if they don't know people that play already.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be a lot more tactical, more grenades going off, like just things that you'd only see on YouTube, highlight reel stuff. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
noticed very quickly when I started playing my first game ever that that's not the case. And not that I didn't absolutely love it. It just was not as exciting as YouTube would make it seem, like at every second of the match. It's
You mean there wasn't a guy like flying in on a helicopter or some guy in like an LAV rolling up the road? Like that didn't happen?
No, there was just a bunch of people in red shirts yelling at people to stay off the outsides of the field. There was a lot of arguing, people getting mad at each other, stuff like that. It's my honestly my first day was a very small day. I was so excited to play. I had just got past the date that I said I was going to play. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go. It was Easter Sunday. I should have waited. No, I should have just said, okay, I'll wait another week. But I was so excited I couldn't do it. So the first one that I went to, I drove about an hour and a half to get to the field, which for me is still not bad. I consider anything under like 2 hours, if it's a good field and I know I'm going to have a fun time, a reasonable drive. So that doesn't kill me. What killed me was when I got there, and the whole reason I picked this field was because everybody's saying it's so popular. There's going to be so many people there, and there was like 10 people for me the first time I played, and it's a big field. So
Hmm.
I felt when I first got in, I didn't know anything at all. So I'm out there on the field with actually nobody around me, not even
Oh my
knowing
god.
where I am because there's only 10 people and I got like separated because one of the guys was like, oh, I'll go ahead of you, and I never saw that guy again. So i
Yep.
I don't really
That
know. Yeah,
happens.
I don't really know you know negatives of my first day. I loved everything about it. I wish that the turnout was bigger. I wish that I would have waited another week to you know be more of an adult and just be around like people on Easter, but I was just so excited I had to go. I had to do it.
Yeah. I think we've all been there too. Like like I've, especially when I was starting out. Like it's not that the novelty has worn off or anything like that. Um, but when I was starting out, I skipped a lot of stuff so I could go to some games, and those games were not that good. Like in retrospect, but like 6 players. Oh, I'm doing this. I'm skipping family dinner. I don't even care.
Yeah,
I gotta go.
yeah.
Right. And I think we've all been there. Like the excitement is real, especially if you got new kit that you want to try, or if it's your first time, or like totally legit, right? Then you look back on it, you're like, that was stupid.
It
But I mean, hey, hindsight,
it
right?
was absolutely stupid. I don't regret it. I definitely wish that I wouldn't have, but I'm not upset that I started. I just
Yeah.
looking back on it now, like that was a date I should have been around people. I was just excited to go play. I had to do it. I was literally a rental in full kit. I just had all my own gear. I walked up there feeling like I was on top of the world, and I pull out my gun. I had already painted it even before my first game. My gun was fully painted. People were giving me compliments on my kit and stuff. I was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" And then I got out there and took my first couple of steps, full sprint with everybody else, after not being active for a considerable amount of time. And I was
Hmm.
I was toast. I was toast within like the first 5 minutes. I got to the first piece of cover that was like, a minute and a half of a sprint that we were getting to, and I was like, oh my god, I need a second. I need a second to just relax. And we were already in the middle of the fight. So it was a big wake up call to me, like both fitness wise and the sport itself. I was just not ready. I was not ready as many ready ups as I could have done. They did not prepare me for how it was actually going to be out on the field.
Yeah. So that your first game, like your first like calendar game aside, like your first few games, so the fitness aspect, the running around aspect, what other things sort of didn't really play out the way that you expected them to?
Okay, so my goggle situation, my face protection situation, um, I found out that I have an oddly shaped face. I guess not really oddly shaped, but being that I am Filipino, I guess I fall into the Asian fit category for some goggles, which I did not think was a thing
Okay.
until I bought some goggles and they just did not fit me. Like everywhere, they fit across my eyes perfectly fine, and then right on the bridge of my nose there was like a gap, just a big gap, like a big enough for somebody to stick their finger in there. And
Oh wow.
I didn't realize that that was a thing until I bought my first goggles and I played my first game, and I realized that wow, this is super uncomfortable. Um, this is not what I want. this is not how I'm supposed to. This is not how I'm supposed to feel, right? I was getting like a tension headache from them being too tight because they were sitting wrong against my face, and I was all about like, oh well, they're full seal. They have to be fully contacting every part of my face so that this isn't, there's not going to be a BB slipping in there. And it
Mhm.
it sucked. It was not fun. It was like I was wearing shoes that were way too tight for 8 hours. It was really bad.
I can relate. Actually, a funny story. My first ever airsoft goggles were Asian Fit Wiley X goggles. I didn't even know that was a thing. Some guy was like, "Yeah, I got these goggles. They're great. They're like $40. They're used." I was like, "Sure, send it to me." And I'm like, "Man, these fit really strange. Like they're very flat and they're not curving all the way to the sides of my face. I don't know what's going on." But yeah, so I can relate the other direction.
Yeah, it was only then that I realized that wow, I actually do have a different facial structure than most other people. So, the goggles that I originally had, which were like Pyramex Eye Forces, which a ton of people recommend, they did great. They didn't fog up, but since they were so tight on my face, my eyelashes were touching the lenses, and
Yeah.
the I would sweat. I sweat a lot. I sweat doing absolutely nothing. So like I could just be sitting in a room on like an okay day, like I not even hot, and I'll be sweating. So
Hmm.
I was out on the field and sweat was running down my eyes from the eyelashes onto the lenses. And they weren't fogging, but it was like I was swimming and I just took off the lens and like put them back on my face while I was under the water. They were just like water dripping down the inside of the lenses. And
Like a sheet
yeah,
going down your
I
lens.
was like, "Oh my god, I can't see." And that was a big like what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do now type of thing for me. And that prompted me to go out and get some goggles that actually fit my face, which I moved on to some ESS crossbows that had a specific nose nose bridge attachment. I don't know exactly what they're called, but it it goes on your nose, and they were made for Asian fit. So the thing is huge. Like it's a
Awesome.
thick nose bridge, but it makes the glasses actually fit my face. And it they served me well for a super long time until I started having a ton of issues with fogging. And fogging, I feel like, is an issue that's never going to go away for me because all of my fields around me are full seal goggles. That's what they require, full seal face protection. Um,
Yep.
and there's really no way to get around that for me. So I can't go and get shooter goggles and feel okay about it. Like I could probably get away with it on the field, but I know I'd be breaking a rule, and I know that at any time, like a ref could come up and call me out for it, and I'd have to be like, okay, and then go take care of that, which is not something I want to deal with. I just want to be able to play.
And I mean, you're putting like we talked about in the podcast a few weeks ago, like safety rules also keep other people feeling safe, right? Safe to engage you. And if you're not wearing the right eye pro and then suddenly something happens, maybe somebody injures you and they never meant to, like that kind of sucks too. So, props to you for wearing the right eye pro. And you're right, like fogging is not something, it's something we're all going to have to struggle with at some point. Like even here in Newfoundland, like you go into the deep woods, your goggles are going to fog. It's going to happen, right? There's really not a lot that you can do unless you're using some sort of like fan solution that is forcing dry air through the lens or drying off the lens or stuff like that. That's a different, as we say on the East Coast, a different kettle of fish. But like, if you are just wearing regular, you know, goggles that even if they have really good venting, like my V12s have really good venting, you're still eventually going to get fogging, and it is a challenge, right? There's aftermarket solutions too. Like I'm sure you've researched it. Like some, cat crap is one that everyone like talks about
I
as
tried that.
something you can use. But
Yep,
yeah,
I tried
but
cat
like,
crap.
does it really all work? Like,
So cat crab worked for me until it was a hot day, and the cat crab itself, since it's like a paste inside the tube, it melted. And when it melted, it turned into like a full liquid. And after
mhm,
that, it never went back to being the same. It was like instead of being a paste like a chapstick, that you can like rub on your finger, it was like little tiny shards of paste. And when you put it onto your goggles, it would just be like chunks of stuff
gross.
everywhere, and it never did the job anymore. I felt like I was using like watered down solution instead. But
Hmm.
I don't know how much that stuff really works because no matter what I do, they're gonna fog. I have um Asian locusts, which are the Asian fit version of the desert locust now, with a fan built in,
Hmm.
and I still get fog sometimes. So it's for me, I kind of just accepted that if I'm going to be playing in the Northeast where these are the rules, I'm going to be fogging at some point all the time.
Yeah.
There's no escape.
And the advantage is, it's not just you, right? Everybody else is fogging too. So at the very least, you're being hampered just as much as everybody else, right? Probably not as bad as some other people too. Like when we play at Frontline, sometimes the renters come out and they're wearing like the field masks, and I remember using the field masks. I'm like, well, that sucks for you because you're not going to be able to see anything within the next 15 minutes. Like you're going to be done, especially if it's hot and humid, like you're saying, but also if you're just sweating, right? If your face gets hot and that gets caught up in that mask, forget it,
Yeah,
right? So, yeah, real problem.
there was at some point I went to a new field, which I really really like. Actually, it's one of my favorite fields. But I went to that field, and that place is totally underneath the canopy of the trees, and it is all like swamp in there. Like there's a ton of swampy areas, and so it's super humid all the time. The first time I ever went there, my car was actually at the shop. It was getting fixed, and I had left my little bag with my anti fog stuff in the car. So
Ah,
I went to the field and I didn't even think about that. I was driving my girlfriend's car because mine was getting fixed. And when I got there, I was like, oh my God, I don't have my anti fog. So I was like, oh, I'll be okay. I ripped off, I had ripped off all the foam, and I tried using soap, to see if that would do it. And I got out there, and within like the first 15 minutes, I was like, oh my God, I cannot see anything. I couldn't see my teammates 15 feet in front of me, what they were telling me to do. I couldn't see motions. Everything just became a
oh my
blur.
god.
And it was it really ruined my day that day because I drove up there to a new field. It was another hour and a half away, and I couldn't experience it how I wanted to. I couldn't see people that were in front of me. I kept dying because I couldn't see anything. So how am I going to return fire if I have no idea where the person is to begin with? Um,
Right?
and I don't know. It started this like this this want in me to be like, I need to fix this problem. And then more money and more money and more money later, I just realized that, wow, there really is no good solution to this. Like, short of
Yeah.
getting a dye mask, which apparently people say are like, oh, those will never fog. And I don't want to wear a dye paintball mask out on the field. It doesn't really fit my cool guy aesthetic. So
Yeah.
it doesn't work for me, you know?
So coming back to like your first game, first few games, let's call it. Like, so we talked about the gear, we talked about sort of like your own prep. Like, did you have any anxieties about going to the field? Because you mentioned like you didn't have any friends coming with you, you're just going by yourself. Like, did you have any like I said anxiety, but also just like preconceived notions about what you thought the player base, the community was going to be like before you hit the field?
So all I really had to go off of was the few interactions I'd had with people from my local Facebook airsoft group. Because there's one for my general area. It's actually not my state, but there's just a nearby state that's a lot bigger than us when it comes to airsoft. So I had a few interactions with people on there, and what I really noticed is that everybody was super friendly. It seemed like everybody wanted to help out everybody no matter what, unless they were like somebody that people didn't like, I guess. But even then, it was always like there was somebody that would give them advice on something. So I definitely was anxious going to the field for the first time just because I didn't know anybody, but I've also always been super social. I've always been good at talking to new people, going up and approaching people and just saying, hey, what's going on? And introducing myself and kind of just like commingling myself into whatever they're doing without being
Hmm.
like weird about it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
important.
yeah,
Important
you
skill.
can't just like slide into the group and be like silent and just be like, oh yeah, let's go do this. No, I was always very social. Growing up, I did a lot of acting and theater, which made me talk to a lot of people and be in front of a lot of people. So I
Hmm.
never really had that fear standing in front of a group being like, wow, I can't do this, or I can't say what I want to say because I was afraid that they'd laugh at me or whatever. So coming into the new field, not knowing anybody, I did exactly what I thought I was going to, and I found somebody that looked like they knew what they were doing, and I just
Hmm.
went up and started chatting with them. And I actually haven't played with that guy too many times outside of that one time, but he was a very experienced player. He gave me a lot of tips. He showed me around the field. And he showed me, oh, these are good spots to go to, and these are good places to go to. And it really gave me a good first day, even though everything else was like so hard for me. Not knowing
Hmm.
the field, not knowing what I was doing. I didn't know, the limits of my gun because I never shot it in action. That tree is not running away from me, returning fire in my backyard. So it it
Yeah, that's right.
it became a lot more, real to me when I got out there. And then I was like, wow, leading your shots and actually knowing how to move, when to move, what you're supposed to be moving to. Um, it was just like a big wow. I didn't expect any of this. But when I got there and I had a friend in my head, somebody that I had just started talking to, it made it 10 times better. But I can see people coming in, and I've seen people coming in, like rentals and stuff, that don't have anybody else there, and they just don't talk to anybody. And I know how that feels because I used to be shy. So I kind of make it a point to, if there's people that are standing around or, they look new or they're not talking to anybody, I always kind of make it a point now to go and say, hey, and introduce myself. And if I have my group of friends around me, introduce them, because I feel like the only way that you're really going to enjoy it is if you have people around you that are also like, all right, come on, let's go do this. Unless you're like a super lone wolf that just likes to be by themselves all the time, which,
Yeah, then
yeah,
why did you pick a social activity then?
exactly. You could just go
Yeah.
plink in your backyard or something like that and enjoy it. But
Hmm.
so coming into it, a little bit of anxiety, but it wasn't for the social aspect of it. It was more so just like, how is this going to play out? Am I prepared enough? Do I have the right stuff? um, how am I going to be feeling? Am I going to hurt myself? Because I was never a runner. I played hockey growing up, so everything I did was low impact. Skating is a lot different than running. So
Yeah.
when I got out there and I was, trudging through the woods, my knees and my back were like, oh my god, what are you doing to me? And it was a big wake up call. That rest of the week after the first day, I
Yeah.
felt like I had just been like stretched by four different people in three different ways, and then we're told to like, oh, just deal with it and just walk around. I felt so sore. Everything hurt. My legs hurt. It hurt to stand up, from sitting. It was like
Yeah.
it was like the worst leg day of my life when I
Yeah.
went back for
Yeah.
after my first day of airsoft.
And what was it like for you, like the fear of getting hit, not having been hit ever before? What was that? What was going on through your head as a beginner?
So I will somewhat avoid this question because I did get shot before. Um, I
Okay.
had the privilege, quotations, of having my girlfriend's dad shoot me with my airsoft gun so that I would know what it feels like before I went
Oh,
out
I
there.
see.
My mom wouldn't do it. My dad wouldn't do it. My girlfriend wouldn't do it, and my girlfriend's dad said yes. So I'm sure he got some thrill out of shooting me in the back with my airsoft gun, especially when I told him, "Oh yeah, hey, just stay on semi-auto," and then he flipped it to full auto at like 30 feet and just unloaded into my bare back. But yeah.
Nice.
So for me, it was the shock of the first hit. I didn't really know what to think it was going to be. People say it's like, oh, it's like a pinch, it's like a snap, like a bee sting. The only thing that I can really equate it to is the worst ones feel like a big elastic band just got snapped onto you. But it's the same thing. It goes away like almost
Hmm.
immediately. Like, yeah, it sucks when it happens, but most of the time now when I'm running, I'll get hit like full sprint, and in my head I'll be like, "Oh, that hurt," and then I'll get to cover and I'll be like, "Wow, I that hurt then, but I totally forgot about it now that I'm like dead and just waiting to be
Yeah.
revived."
Yeah.
You
Once
know?
your mind catches
Yeah,
up to your body.
yeah. So I'm like, "Wow,
Yeah.
that sucked at the time, but I was literally full sprint doing something else, and it's like I totally forgot about it." Until I sat down, I was like, "Wow, that kind of sucked." Um, the hits now don't bother me so much as long as it's not like on my knuckles. Um, Getting shot in the cheek sucks. Now that I don't wear full face protection, I just wear one that covers my nose and my mouth.
Hmm.
But I'm okay dealing with that as long as I feel comfortable out on the field. So people that walk around with no face protection, I don't know how you do it, Phil. I don't know how the rest of the Storm Riders guys do it. Um,
I'm stupid. That's
yeah.
how I do it. That's easy.
Well, I going into CQB with that, I would be petrified. I'm already
Yeah.
going into CQB at the fields that I play at, since we have some pretty high jewel limits with no MED. I'm already like a little bit nervous going into a doorway or clearing a room because I'm like, I don't know if the guy right there is at limit and is about to just
Yeah.
unload into me or like light up my side or something like that. So um it wasn't as bad as I thought pain wise. It definitely sucks sometimes, but most of the time you're like 50 feet away, 100 feet away, you're getting hit, and it's like somebody just like tossed a pebble at you, and it's like, oh, what was that?
Yeah.
I guess I'm hit, and then you just call it.
Did you feel any like cover paralysis? Like you're behind cover and you don't want to leave because you don't know what's out there?
The first couple of games, definitely. Mostly because I didn't know where I was. I had no idea where I was on the field, like in relation to something else. Because the game modes, at first, which I'm not a huge fan of TDM, but this field likes to play TDM for like the first 4 games of the day because people like to show up at like 12 and we start games at like 10:30. So
Hmm.
they'll play until like 1, like really, really low commitment games so that people don't get bored. And there was no point for me to move sometimes because they'd put like a limit on the field, like, all right, this is the halfway point, we don't really want you going past this point, so you can get up to like a certain area and then be like, well, now what am I supposed to do? Like,
Hmm.
now am I supposed to just try to cover myself while I fall back? Am I gonna have this guy behind me that I literally have not said a single word to provide the most excellent covering fire so I can get out of
Yeah.
this situation? You know, um, I definitely didn't have like the paralysis, like I was afraid to move. It was more so just like I don't know when. And that's something I'm
Yeah.
still working on now. I'm trying to be more aggressive and move cover to cover a lot better. But sometimes when you got like a saw just laying down fire on your position, it feels like you can't. It feels like you can't
Yeah.
move. And that's something I still got to break through.
I think we're all still working through that as well, especially when some of the guys like unloading at like really high rate of fire. You're like, I'm not going out there. If you can go, I'm not going.
Yeah.
um, what do you find has changed? So, I mean, it's been several months. I mean, it's been like 6 months, basically half a year. just over half a year since you started your first game. What has changed for you since then? And maybe we'll start by talking about like your gear. Like, what are some of the things that you've changed, upgraded, ditched since you started playing, and sort of why?
So I started off without like a Molly belt. I started off with just like a regular belt that I got at the store that was in Coyote Brown. And I realized when I had my dump pouch on it that it was really weighing me down. Like the dump pouch would start pulling down my belt, and like my pants would start like coming down like while I was playing. So I was like, all right, I can't deal with that anymore. So I remember
Hmm.
I was talking to you guys when I first got my new belt, and I was like, Phil, I just got this Grey Ghost gear belt, and you just posted the money signs picture in the Discord,
Yeah.
like throwing away money. And yes, that belt cost way too much money, but it's something that I use every single time now, and it's been
Yeah.
so useful to me. So I used to do all of my reloading from my plate carrier, and when I first got my plate carrier, I had one of those. The three, it was like it could hold 6 mags, but they were in individual slots, and they were bungee retention on the top. And I remember I was in my house, I had all 6 mags in the pouches, and I was like practicing like speed reloads from all 6 positions. And then in my head, I was like, when am I ever going to reload this much without getting a chance to like shift something, like rearrange something? And all my mags were like easily accessible. There was almost no retention because I took the bungees off. So if one mag was out, the other one could just fall out because there was nothing in front of it.
Hmm.
Um, and I slimmed that down because I was like, wow, this is stupid. This is really stupid. I don't need 6 mags on my chest ready to go because I'm not burning through 6 mags like that. I mean, I'm not Phil. So I'm not shooting
Yeah.
through,
Yeah. Thanks, bud.
yeah, I'm not shooting through, 1,500 rounds in a 10-minute skirmish. So I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I slimmed that down, and I ended up getting actually inspiration from, what movie was it? There was some movie that I saw on Netflix that I don't remember what it is now, but one of the guy's plate carriers, he had a double M4 mag pouch, like the Velcro pouches that could hold four. And then he had one fast mag, like a G code Scorpion pouch right next to it on the plate carrier. And in my head, I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. You really only need to have that one that's ready to go, and then you can just re-index from the other ones. So I ditched my 6 mags that were on the front, and I ended up just running with five, or most of the time four, because I didn't feel like I needed five on me. And started reloading still from my chest. As I got further into it, I was like, wow, I don't really like how much this belt sucks. So this is looping back to the belt. I ended up getting a couple G Code Scorpion knockoffs that were like $15 on Amazon. Um, and I have two of those on my belt now. And now all of my reloading, unless I am in no like imminent danger, like I don't need a speed reload, now all of my reloading comes from my belt. So I've gotten so much faster at reaching down, my whole side's all clear, reaching down and pulling out the mag, and then doing the same thing, putting it back in my dump pouch is so much faster for me than it was on my chest. And it got rid of a lot of the bulk of having all those mags on my plate carrier, because I like to go prone all the time.
Hmm.
I feel like if you are not going prone, you are making a mistake in airsoft.
Yeah.
If you can go prone, if your body allows you to, I feel like you should be, because you are so hard to hit sometimes when you're prone, especially at a distance.
Totally.
Seeing a prone guy, even if he's just wearing normal clothes, sometimes if you're not actively looking for him, is so difficult. So I moved to the belt setup mostly, just the mags for retention on my chest. I had my radio because I met some guys that were running a radio, and they let me borrow one of theirs. And I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing. I can talk to all these guys, let them know where I
Game
am.
changer.
Yeah, it was a huge thing for me. So I immediately went out and bought a radio. I got one of those speaker mics. I got one that was way too expensive just because I was like, oh, this will never break. So I got,
That's how you do.
yep. I'm trying to remember. It's a Code Red, I believe. Like it's like the high end speaker mics, and so I got one of those, and I had it running up into my Ear Pro, which is the Howard Late Ear Pro. It's just like
Hmm.
regular shooting Ear Pro, and I just run a wire from the speaker mic to the headset. So that got rid of my comms issue. I love that. I still use that setup now. I think it's the same thing that Chaz uses. Um,
Same thing that Pat uses too.
oh, okay, yeah. So I know
Yep.
that I saw some other people using it, and I wouldn't go back. Actually, I need to get another cable because I think my one connector cable died last weekend. I could only hear people through the speaker, but I have no complaints about that setup. When it came to my uniform, I had my multicam pants, my multicam top, and I had some over the knee pads, just the regular strap on knee pads. And the first couple of games that I played, I was like, oh, this is fine until I started walking up the field with super bad calf cramps, like right underneath the knee pad. I was like, oh my God. I felt like I was going to have to stop walking and like sit down and take all the weight off of it. And I realized it was because my knee pads, in order to keep them from not moving, were so tight on my legs that they were making me cramp up really bad. Um,
Hmm.
and I am always taking a knee all the time when I'm on the field. If I'm not prone, I'm probably on a knee somewhere. So I always felt that they were super important because I will take a knee anywhere. If it's like
Yeah.
on a thing of rocks, on a stack of logs, anything, twigs, on cement, I'm going down on a knee because it just makes you a smaller target. And I still have not really found a good solution to this outside of getting pants with built-in knee pads. I
Mm.
That is something that I still kind of regret not buying into, is like the knockoff like Cry knee pad pants, the G3s.
I know for me, like I have the True Spec pants, the TRU, they're like their tactical uniform or whatever, and it has like just a pouch where you can slot their knee pad in. Or what I would did is I just use those like puzzle piece mats from like Walmart or whatever, and I just cut two knee pad shaped pads and just stuff them in there, and I take them out to wash them every single time. And the only issue that I have is I'm a short dude. I've talked about it before. I'm not ashamed of it. But what happens is most pants, the knee pad is not precisely in the right location for where my knee is. So I need to get them tailored to bring it up to where it needs to be, or just deal with the fact that like there's a 75% chance that my knee pad will be in the right place, but there's 25% chance that I take a knee and I'm just gonna get a rock in the knee instead.
Yeah, so I have a couple pants that are like that. I have some LBX Assaulters pants that are like my favorite pants outside of my ones with built-in knee pads that have a knee pad slot. And I got those tailored because LBX has some like weird sizes. I was like right in between two sizes. I was too big these were way too small on me, but the size up was way too big. So I had to go get them tailored down. And they fit me great now, but the knee pads, since they're not actually integrated, you have to just slide one in. For some reason they always like to go to the inside of my knee. They're always going like towards the inside. So if I go to take a knee, there's a good chance that part of my knee, if I don't go down perfectly, is going to be touching the ground. And it's always like
Yeah.
the outside of my kneecap. And that's definitely got me a couple times. I still do it because I really don't want to go back to wearing over the pants knee pads. I need to find a solution. I don't know if I can bring my other BDUs to the tailor that don't have sewed in knee pads and be like, hey, here's some material. Can you make a knee pad slot for these? Um, but the knee pads thing for me, I didn't realize how important they were or how bad it was to have bad knee pads set up until I started using those all the time. And my excuse now for not wearing them is I've worn them a lot. So they're kind of beat up, like stitchings
Yeah.
coming out and stuff like that. They're all beat up. So in my head, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna use something else. But I know that like I have a couple pairs of pants that don't have built-in knee pads. They don't have knee pad slots, so I'm gonna have to get some, over the knee pads again. Unless I like go for those under the pants knee pads, like the volleyball or like the dye knee pads that people in paintball wear. That just kind
Yep.
of slide on like a sock. But that is another purchase that I do not want to make. So I just don't want to spend that money.
I used some of those paintball knee pads many years ago before I played airsoft because I did play paintball, and when I started playing airsoft as well before I bought some of the over the knee ones, and I didn't find them particularly comfortable. But I have like pretty big calves, pretty big like hamstrings and quads, so they were always really tight,
Mhm.
which is no bueno, right? Like it's just I don't need circulation to be cut off to my feet, and I don't need to feel like my legs are a sausage like throughout the day. Like it's just not comfortable. So the over the knee, like I had to wear them actually recently because I was wearing my Desert Night Camo top,
Hmm.
and
That sounds
yeah,
familiar,
and
Phil.
and I had my OD. I have like a pair of like cheap OD proper pants because I couldn't get the Shadow strategic ones because they weren't in stock or whatever. But long story short, I was wearing just regular OD pants, and I had to wear a knee pad on top of it because there's no knee pads. So I had one knee pad. So I had to just remember to always take a knee with my right knee, never with my left. And it was okay, but it was definitely not as good as having that knee pad built in. And to your point, like sometimes you really have to crank it down so it doesn't move, and that doesn't feel good. Like, if you have little tiny stick legs, I don't know how that's staying up all day without really torquing it down. Like I just don't know.
Feel like you got to tie it in a
So,
knot and then connect it. Like it
yeah.
just
Yeah, so long story short, guys, don't skip knee pads and don't skip leg day. Those are the two things.
seriously.
So, like, in terms of your play style now, like, what do you think you've worked on since you started? And obviously, 6 months is of playtime is pretty significant, right? So, what are the things that you think you've really sort of nailed down, and what are you working on now? Like, what's your next point that you're trying to improve on?
So when I first started, my play style was, I didn't really have one. So I was just trying to figure out, kind of how the game worked, kind of how people
Hmm.
moved. A lot of the game for me started becoming more natural once I realized that a lot of people that play airsoft are lazy and they're always taking the easiest path to get to wherever it
Yeah.
is. So, you know, I play at a very big field. I think it's like 75 acres or something. It's a
Wow.
big field. And I'll throw it out there. This is Feel Good Farms in New Hampshire. I love that field. Shout out to Tanner, the best marshal out there. But that field is gigantic, and there were so many places for you to go and elevation changes for you to, flank and hide and move around. And I realized that so many people don't want to do that. They just want to go straight at the enemy, and everybody's looking right at them. Yeah, it becomes like
Hmm.
a shooting tunnel. Like you walk down and you're just automatically in the sight because that's exactly where everybody started. They're watching. So I met a couple of people at Feel Good Farms when I first went there, and I realized that, oh wow, there's so much field. I don't know my way around it. But going with them, I started flanking. I started being out on the way outskirts where people wouldn't expect you to be, or they're too lazy to get out there and watch that area. And I really started forming my playstyle around being at the edge of engagement. And if people are seeing you, you are not seen until you want to be seen. Like if they see you, you're out of range. Ideally, they don't see you until it's too late. Most of the time, my plans involve getting behind or, having a group of three people that can take out or suppress a large amount of the team. If they have to take 8 people to combat us three because we're flanking and we're causing them a lot of trouble, that's a huge win for us, even if we're not
Yeah,
pushing all the
totally.
way through, just in resources. So my playstyle has really evolved from not knowing anything to I want to be on the edge of engagements, being on the outskirts, using guns that I feel like can reach out a little bit further is something for me. Although I don't have a proper DMR, I have a gun that's shooting like right at field limit, without being in a DMR class. So I can touch people pretty far away, like around like 200 feet consistently if I need to, and even further than that if I really am feeling ballsy about it. But
Yeah.
yeah, if I feel like shooting, 30 or 40 shots trying to figure out where it's going, maybe I'm hitting them at like 225. But I can hit targets at 250. It's just not consistent. But
Hmm.
something I learned and something I need to work on right now is my CQB. There are a lot of buildings on the fields that I play at. Most of the time, your engagements are not inside the buildings, not under 10 feet. But that is something that I super need to work on, especially if I want to keep going to different milsim events and stuff where there is more built up areas, or there's certain areas that are inside of like an abandoned facility, something like that, where you need to be able to room clear. I'm not good at being quick inside those rooms. I'm not good at taking that first step and being like, I'm going through the door. I'm going in. Like
Yeah.
you can't just wait or block up the door. But it is so hard for me to want to get in there first because I'm so used to being like, I have the advantage. You don't know where I am. I took that first shot. The first couple of shots killed you. Now you can't tell anybody where I am. And then I keep moving. I've always been a hit and move type of person. And the CQB doesn't really allow that. So I've been trying
No.
to I've been trying to work on that a lot. With my guys that I've been playing with, because I did end up forming a team with a couple of my buddies from my main field, which I wouldn't give up for anything. I love those guys. That's some of the best friends that I've ever made in the past 6 months. I've, some of the best friends I've ever made ever. I got in the past 6 months of playing airsoft. So I've been talking with the guys because we're all outskirts flank team type of guys, and I've been saying, guys, we really need to work on getting up close and being more, being louder, because a lot of times we're trying to be quiet and have people not know where we are, and we're under pressure. If there's a lot of people that know where we are, we don't perform as well as we would if
Hmm.
we're on the outskirts. So my play style has really evolved into being the sneaky guy. I wear some stuff when I'm not just trying to play dress up, which I am always trying to play dress up, but I wear some
Yeah.
stuff to try to blend in pretty well. I got a big scrim on my helmet that looks very bushy, and I feel like it does a really good job when I'm like going prone or using it properly. And I always try to use that to my advantage. I never want people to know I'm there until it's too late. So CQB and moving cover to cover while under fire is a big area of improvement for me.
Yeah, and I think, to give yourself a bit of credit, I think transitioning from role to role, so like transitioning from fighting at a distance to then being to something you said right at the beginning about knowing when to make that transition and then make the move and then be able to execute in both spaces is something that takes a lot of practice, and it's not something that I'm an expert at by any stretch of the imagination, right? I played lots of airsoft. I've been playing a really long time, but it's something you need to be really consciously trying to improve on if you're going to want to be able to like you can be really good at one and you can be really good at the other, but there's like to your point, there's tons of guys who play CQB but they're not able to flank because their thing is go go go, get in the enemy's face, not thinking about how to utilize the space that they have. And vice versa, if you're in the outskirts and you're cool with that and you don't want to get up close, that's another piece you need to get accustomed to. You have time to take a shot at 150 feet, you don't have time to take a shot at 5 feet, so you got to figure all that out. But it's a process, right? And so give yourself some credit there. I think it's good to know that that's a limitation of yours now or something that you want to improve on, because at least you can do that as opposed to just being like, oh no, we're rock stars, we don't need to do anything. Well, great, you're not going to get good at it, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. So we have another milsim operation coming up at the end, towards the end of October. There was a much bigger one that I'm actually sitting out on because I wanted to save some money. But we have one in my local field coming up, and it's going to be like the last one of the year. And maybe, hopefully, it won't be super cold. But I mean, it's going to be November, late November in the Northeast. So you never know. I know that
mhm.
a couple years ago it was like 75 when they did it. So like I'm crossing my fingers that maybe it's not going to be 40 or 30, but I just want to be prepared. And I've been playing with my guys recently. We've been going to the field. We've gained a couple new members to our team because we were originally were just three guys. I met a couple guys at some different fields and introduced them to my friends who play exactly like we do, and they're a great fit. I love those guys. But we are all, every single person on the team is an outskirts player. We are all like being the recon team. We move around in like a group of 3 or 4, and people just don't know we're there until it's too late. So going into an op or like a milsim, anything like that, when you're like, okay, this is your objective. Now you secured the outskirts. Now you need to push into the compound, and not knowing what we're doing, like not being experienced at all, it doesn't make us as reliable. And that's what I kind of
Mhm.
want the people at the field to know, like, oh hey, that's Jordan's team over there, yeah, let's send them in to go do this because we know that they can do it, as opposed to being like, they're only really good at this, so let's just keep them on that duty. I just want to be well rounded.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, I mean, it's amazing to me how much you have progressed since the first conversations that we had, 6 months ago when you were gearing up to play your first game, to where you are now and sort of the point of view that you have and like the worldview that you have with respect to airsoft. And it's really cool to be able to have these conversations with people who play different styles in different places. We really didn't start chatting too much until we had the Discord, right? And from then, I mean, we've had really great conversations like with you, but with all kinds of people, like, talking to Locks in Portugal or talking to Shane in the UK. Like it's really cool to see like what other people are doing as well. And see how they're pushing themselves and they're sort of learning and growing as well. And what's really cool for me, I think, is again, and I've mentioned this in the podcast before, but like we live in Newfoundland, our community is very small, and it's often very easy to think that, oh, well, what you're doing is no good, right? Nobody does things the way that you do. Everyone everywhere else is way better than you. Or conversely, you think you're hot shit because you're the best in a community of 10 people. And really having Discord and having these kinds of conversations gives us the perspective to know it's like, hey, you know what? Lots of people play in lots of different ways, but some people play like you, and that's cool. And you will always find other people. And in your case, you found 5 other people in a very short amount of time who do the kinds of things that you like to do on the field, which is awesome, and like to push themselves the way you like to. So it's great.
Hanging out with those guys, Phil, we just had like a little camping outing. We just we camped out of the field just because we wanted to hang out. And I don't know, it doesn't feel like we're forcing anything. Like, yeah, we met each other through airsoft. We stay pretty much strictly airsoft. We never talk about like politics or anything like that. We are just strictly there to have fun and hang out. And I don't think that I've ever had other friends that'd be like, hey, you want to just show up somewhere 12 hours before we need to be there and just hang out before it starts? You're like, yeah, sure. And then we go there and it doesn't feel like it's been long at all.
Yeah.
It's I wouldn't give those people up for many things.
And I'm so glad to hear you say that. And I think, the Storm Riders as a team were very much like that too. There's a lot of people. We just had a new member join last week. So Matt, one of our local players, is joining the team. His number is S19.
Oh my gosh.
We do not
19.
have 19 active players. We have a lot of guys who've come through the team and who haven't played with us for years and who may never play airsoft again. Like we on Discord, you might see Mark. Mark has back injuries. He broke his back when he was like 16. He played airsoft for a bit. Now he's just a little bit younger than I am. He's not in a position where he wants to play airsoft anymore, right? He's got, 2 kids and he races cars, so that's what he does now. He's never going to hit the airsoft field again. Is he not a Storm Rider? Of course not, right? He's still part of the team. We got guys who've moved away to be, police officers. We got guys who just, don't really want to play. They sold all their gear, still have a patch, still on the team, because you build these bonds with people, right? That, like you said, do you want to show up 12 hours and just shoot the shit? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. Right. Do you want to, even random stuff like, hey, I'm moving and I need a truck. Who's got a truck? Yeah. Someone will show up. But yeah, like those are the kinds of bonds that you form in airsoft with people who really you may not have anything in common with. Right? Like there are guys on the team who in high school were jocks and I'm a nerd. Like they would have been stuffing me in a locker in high school. Right. And despite that, we're still hanging out. And it's very much like on the Discord too. Like you look at Chaz, like all due respect to Chaz. Chaz is old enough to be your dad.
Oh,
right?
Seriously.
And
I think he is the same age as my dad.
Well, let's not tell him that.
Yeah.
Hopefully he misses this when he's listening to the podcast. But that's what brings us together, and you can really build strong bonds with people no matter where they are, right? So I'm just so grateful to you for coming on and having a conversation with us. I think it's the first of many. I think I'd love to have you again to have more conversations about, especially I'm really interested to know a bit more about what the games are like specifically, because that's something that you can't really know unless you actually play. So I'd love to hear a bit more from you on that next time we chat.
Absolutely, Phil. I really appreciate you having me on here. It was awesome to be actually able to chat because
Yeah.
until this point we haven't chat in voice. So now you know what I sound like. I've been listening to you for months now. So
That's not creepy at all, dude.
Yeah. But I'm very happy to be here. I'm glad that we could have this chat. And yeah, I'm looking forward to whatever else that you're looking to talk about because I have a lot I like to talk. So I got lots of things to say.
Sounds good, man. Well, thanks so much for joining us, guys. As I always say, if you do want to keep the conversation going, find us on Discord. We've got a great community full of guys like Jordan and Chaz and everybody else. Come join us, have a chat, talk about airsoft, and until next time, that's all I got for you. We'll see you next time. Take care.